My name is Phillip Harrity. I am the Access Services and Archival Coordinator for the university. I work over in a library. Today we'll go over a little bit about the history of the school and the university archives. So the school first opened as the Business Training College on February 6th of 1933. So this is coming out of the Great Depression. At this time, a woman named Dorothy Finkelhor, she had been teaching in Pittsburgh, in the Pittsburgh Public Schools for about 10 years. And she had seen a lot of friends of hers that were losing their jobs and everything else because of the Great Depression. She finally was let go from her job because her husband had a job. That was a thing at the time, was that a lot of the times that the one of the two the husband and wife, one of them had a job, the other one didn't have to work, so that more families could actually have somebody in the working sector. She started with babysitting for her kids, to have somebody come and watch her kids, and she said, but she didn't have any money to pay them. So what she said, she would teach them how to type shorthand and different secretarial things, because she had done that for so many years. And she saw a lot of women actually wanted to do this, wanted to pick this up. So her husband prompted her and said, you really do love to teach, so why don't you actually start a school? So her and her husband started the Business Training College. It first opened its doors, like I said, in 1933. When they first opened, they only had 8 students, and she was the only teacher. She would actually joke around saying that she was the janitor, the teacher, the principal, everything. She did the whole thing. Her first few students came from different backgrounds, from architectural backgrounds, attorneys, engineers, and several nurses at the time. Because of the cheap tuition at that time, they had only charged $10 per month on tuition, so they grew pretty fast. From 1933 to 1936, they had actually went from 8 students to 200 students, and from 1 faculty member to 10. And because of this, they had to keep moving over the years. So they originally, when they first started doing all this, they were in the Hack building, which was over by Market Square, which was one of the buildings that was torn down to build PPG Place. Later, they would move into the Fulton building, which is still over by the Allegheny River. And they would then move into the Moose building, then to the Carlton House, now where the August Wilson Center is. And last, they would move into the Woodwell building, which is now called Academic Hall, which is part of Point Park University. I always found it kind of interesting, one thing that was always written down: the Business Training College students must be able to write shorthand at the rate of 100 words per minute, have a typing speed of 50 words, a good personal appearance, and show cooperative attitude towards the faculty and fellow students. On one of the sides here, you'll see the basketball team that they were for the Business Training College, that was their intramural championships, that they were the top in Pittsburgh. And you'll also see Dorothy Finkelhor with 3 different students. Those were actually the first engineering students to graduate from the school. And in some of the paperwork, it actually says that they were the first engineering secretaries to graduate from the nation itself. And in the next slide, you'll see an engineering student. And beside that, you'll see a nurse with the instructor teaching her different parts of human anatomy. And that instructor is Phyllis Davis. It's a big name because she would go on to be one of the deans at Point Park during the whole transfer time. So amongst the growth of the school, they had started to see that they should be something bigger than just a secretary school. So they wanted to start a junior college. In 1960, they had first opened. They were the first junior college within Pittsburgh. They had now would open to 600 students during the day and 220 students in the evening, for a total of 820 students for their first enrollment. Dorothy would become the first president of the school in 1962, which is also when they would actually break ground for the first dormitory for the school, and that would be Thayer Hall. Thayer Hall was built from the ground up. Before that, it was a parking lot. It was never a hospital, according to what everybody says. At the actual groundbreaking, not just the Finkelhors, but also David O. Lawrence, who was the governor, members from University of Pittsburgh and from other surrounding colleges were here, as well as one of the state representatives, John J. Murray. Amongst the different expansions that they would have over the next few years, including the building of the dormitory, Dorothy would end up retiring, and the next president of the school would be Art Blum. Now, Art Blum would take over on June 18th of 1967. In 1968, enrollment for the school was up to now 2,387 students. Big change from what it was when they first opened. It would be around this time when they would actually take over control for the Playhouse, and they would actually help build up the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater in 1970, and then the dance program would first be opened in 1971. Amongst all this big expansions and everything else at this time period, we would open up the Swiss campus and the Lester A. Hamburg Center. The Swiss campus is just what it sounds like. In Switzerland, we leased a villa in Lugano, Switzerland, and students were able to go to school over in Switzerland, and they would pay the same amount that they would to go over there. Point Park would foot the bill for flights and everything else like that, and they would be over there for a 10-week course. The other piece was the Lester A. Hamburg Center, which was 80 acres of land that was donated to the school out in Lawrence County. There was a large main house, there was 3 cottages, a swimming pool, and a large performance area. There would be performances out there from the Pittsburgh Wind Symphony, which at this time the Point Park was working with. There would be lectures, conferences, and different dance performances out there. The enrollment from 1971 to 1972 would now drop to 1,773 students. So that's down from the 2,387 that we had in 1968. A major loss. There was losses from all departments except for COPA and journalism. It wasn't just our school, though, at this time period. Enrollment average was down nationwide. To try to help for this, they would start to raise the tuition up a little bit. From 1966, when it cost $950 a semester to go here, they would now raise it to $2,000. It was during this time that Point Park would break ties with the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater, as well as breaking their ties with the Pittsburgh Wind Symphony. We also had to get rid of our campus in Switzerland, and unfortunately the conference center that was out in Lawrence County. The thing is to not look at the really bad parts about all this, but it's what the school did from that. And the school came together almost as a family to try to right the ship. And they did, obviously, since you're all here. Students and staff would start the Save Our School campaign, which was a 24-hour marathon fundraiser that they raised over $12,000 alone. One of the instructors, he had a fantastic beard, and he said he would shave his beard in public. People would donate $100 each. He was able to raise $15,000, and it was in the newspaper saying, a Point Park professor will do anything to help save the college. Between all the money that the students, staff, and the faculty were able to raise, we had finally actually started to get donations from different foundations that were actually able to write us. But amongst this time, Art Blum would end up retiring, and the next president of the school is John Hopkins, who would take over in 1972. He actually opened up the first Saturday college. The first few programs that they offered in that were journalism and communication, business management, accounting, and engineering. He would also start getting rid of a lot of our sports teams that would cost a lot of money. He was going to get rid of actually all of them, but the students fought to keep the baseball and basketball team, which ended up actually doing really well that year. Basketball went 15-8, and baseball had 59 wins out of their 65 games, a runner-up for the Eastern Regionals. So the next part, we'll talk about the building history, the different buildings that you'll see around campus. First of them being Academic Hall. Academic Hall was originally called the Joseph Woodwell Building. It was one of the oldest hardware stores in Pittsburgh. The current piece that you see today was an addition that was added on in 1907. The original building was only 3 floors high. The reason why it thrives so well is that the Monongahela, the Mon Wharf, that's where a lot of the shipping would come in, and the ships would dock along there and would actually pull all their products up to the different stores. So this time period in early Pittsburgh, you saw a lot more storefronts downtown because that's where the deliveries came. Later, also where the trains would come and deliver, so trains and boats and everything were delivering everything downtown. So that's why a lot of these things would build up. So the building, like I said, was replaced and added on in 1907. On April 9th of 1921, the building was actually picked up and moved 40 feet. It was moved by steam engine and rollers. The building weighed 4,000 tons. Now, the interesting part about this was that everyone was working in the building as if it was any other day. They had water, sewage, electricity, and everything. They had no problems. It was just another day to them. But the whole time, the building was being moved. This was done by the Eichley Corporation. At the time, this was the biggest move that a building had ever been moved. Most of you are probably questioning, why would this building be moved? Well, the small street that you would see in these pictures here was 2nd Avenue. Now, 2nd Avenue in 1920 they would start building up to make Boulevard of the Allies. So this 2-lane road would become the 5-lane road that it is today. So a lot of the buildings were actually torn down, but the Joseph Woodwell building was so important to the city that they decided to keep it and just picked it up and moved it, sidewalk and all. The next building is good old Lawrence Hall. Lawrence Hall was actually built in 1928 as the Keystone Athletic Club. This building was originally built for the elite of Pittsburgh, for somewhere for them to go and to hang out. It had 284 bedrooms when it was first built, each with their own private bath. It had a gymnasium, a swimming pool, bowling alley, squash courts, dining and assembly rooms, golf practice rooms, and athletic equipment. Unfortunately, due to the stock market crash, the elite of Pittsburgh weren't so elite anymore. So a lot of them weren't actually able to go to this anymore. So they just built this beautiful building, and now nobody could use it. So they tried to revitalize it, and in the 1930s, they made it into the Keystone Hotel. It would later be purchased by the Sheridan Company in 1952 and be called the Sherwin Hotel. And the Sherwin Hotel would stay open until 1967, when Point Park College would end up buying it and named it Lawrence Hall. We named it Lawrence Hall in dedication to Governor David L. Lawrence, who was also one of our original board members for the school. And the piece that ties those two buildings together, the bridge that was added on a Sunday in the fall of 1969. The bridge was driven into Pittsburgh and then in one day was installed and put up. So the next building is the University Center. So the University Center, the original part was built in 1902. It was built as the Colonial Trust Bank. So the original part was on the 4th Avenue side of the building, which is where the TV studio and everything is now. The second part was added in 1905, which is where part of the library is, as well as where the film department is. At this time, the teller desk was the largest teller desk in the world. It stretched over 250 feet. The main entrance to the building that you come into today wasn't added until 1926. At this time, this is when the clock, as you see it today, where it is, was actually moved. In 1905, the clock was actually installed, but it faced the opposite way. It faced so that you could see the time from either side of the building. So it continued being a bank up until 1976, when it became the Bank Center Mall. The Bank Center Mall had 2 movie theaters in it, a few different stores, restaurants, clubs, even a sock store, so I've been told. It was a mall up until 1987. Now, until 1998, the building actually sat vacant for years, until the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh and Point Park would both team together to open up the library and revitalize it. And it wouldn't be until 2004 that the Carnegie Library would actually end up moving out and we would take over the library. So, the last part of the presentation is about the mascots of the school. We have a few different mascots that we've had over the years. Everyone always asks why we're the pioneers. Well, we did actually have a pioneer at one point as our mascot, as well as a pioneer girl. The pioneer mascot was first introduced in 1963. Unfortunately, we decided that we would have to move away from that because he had a striking resemblance to the Robert Morris Minuteman. We wanted to keep the pioneer, so we had pioneer girl who would walk a bison around. This is when we would first start. In 1966, we would have the first bison costume. And it was so hard to see inside that costume, which is why he needed somebody to help him walk around. And at one point, there was a big parade because we brought our live mascot for the first time into the city. Yes, we had an actual live bison that lived in South Park. His name was Black Diamond. Black Diamond, unfortunately, only been there for about 3 months until he passed away. They believe he was taken out of captivity too soon, but to this day is still a bison community out in South Park that anybody can go see, but that is where the original Black Diamond lived.